You know, as much as we say how much we love these superhero films that get pounded down our throats every other week, it really has to be faced that if Marvel Studios had come out and announced that there were going to be no more standalone Thor movies, nobody really would have given us stuff. I mean, the first film that came out in 2011 was a pretty good introduction to the Thor character. The second film that came out in 2014, called Thor: The Dark World, and wasn't that a bad title, was so boring and so bland that people can barely remember anything about it other than buying the ticket and remembering that Chris Hemsworth was in it. So the prospect of this third film really doesn't come with a lot of expectations, and the prospect of seeing Thor just as another bit player in other Marvel films was pretty much of a muchness. I mean, seriously, who cared deeply enough about Thor or his naughty brother Loki or their dad or the fate of their intergalactic home realm of Asgard to really want to see more? Well, it is the noble brief of this third Thor film, Thor Ragnarok, to make you care again. Now, to that end, New Zealand director Taika Waititi and his improbably buffed star Chris Hemsworth have deployed lashings of humour, some of it improvised and some of it only noticeable to audiences in Australia and New Zealand, to really grease the cogs of yet another wind-up franchise vehicle. And to their credit, they've done a pretty good job. The film is not only a fine mass-market standalone slice of entertainment, it's easily the equal funniest Marvel film yet, alongside the first Guardians of the Galaxy film, and it does make up for that thoroughly forgettable Thor 2. More a superhero movie with jokes rather than an out-and-out comedy, Thor Ragnarok is careful to deliver all of those elements we expect to see in a superhero film. There are reels of big-scale action, wild chases, explosions, close-quarter fighting, heroics of course, and an overarching story about saving Thor's world from enslavement. Now, central to the mischief in the film is Hela, played by a magnificent Kate Blanchett, who is Thor's sister, and she's returned from banishment to reclaim Asgard as her own. And she is not to be messed with. One sweep of her hand can lay waste to an entire battalion of intergalactic soldiers. She also appears to have the ability of bringing down huge spaceships just by looking at them. Now, while Thor, played of course by Hemsworth, and Loki, played by Tom Hiddleston, who for the first time seems to be enjoying himself, while those guys are heading back to Asgard via that strange Rosen-Eisenstein bridge thing through the space-time continuum, whatever it is, they get thrown off course and fall into this weird other realm run by an eccentric overlord, played by Jeff Goldblum, who has this thing for lethal arena sports. Anyway, also the Hulk is there for good measure, and, like Thor, seems to have unaccountably obtained a rather witty sense of humour. There's a generous peppering of throwaway one-liners throughout the typically scrambled storylines of Thor Ragnarok, most of them apparently improvised and designed to mock the seriously huge production effort that we see on the screen. Now, Hemsworth is terrific in this, shorn of his hippie hair and minus his almighty hammer. He really does prove himself adept at slapstick, while Blanchett does a killer job as the sleek, sexy villainess. Sealed in an unforgiving black catsuit and crowned with lethal antlers, she also is really good at dropping golden lines in just the right spots and in just the right way. Indeed, her performance compares so well with the scenery-tuning one that she gave as the evil stepmother in Cinderella, you could develop a fan theory that the two characters are long-lost sisters, but that's the topic of another film perhaps. As with most of these post-content superhero films that are churned out by the Marvel factory, there are blasts of barely comprehensible exposition and story holes big enough to fly a starship through. You do get the general gist of things, but at times events move so quickly in this film that it takes a second viewing to really make sense of what is actually happening. And believe me, the film does stand up to a second viewing. It still remains very, very funny, and you really do get the sense of how well the humour works. Visually, the film is a big step above the swirl of rubble that we've been treated to recently by these films. Thankfully, Waititi sidesteps the blurry, frenetic visual style that has dogged so many Marvel films, including Thor 2, of course, and he actually works in a few scenes that involve nothing more than the characters speaking to each other. Now, hardcore fanboys trying to account for Thor's sudden comic turn are likely to go crazy trying to fit him into the existing Marvel universe, as it's called. For instance, why is he so funny all of a sudden? And isn't this some horrific violation of precious character? Well, forget about that. The film's joking doesn't just make this adventure much more watchable, it clearly instructs die-hard fans not to take the so-called Marvel mythology all that seriously. After all, there's a scene in this film where Thor learns the truth about his beloved hammer. Now, whether or not this is intended as a joke, it certainly places Thor squarely in the B-movie realm where things don't really stand up to too much thinking. And of course, if you are thinking too much in a film like Thor Ragnarok, you're clearly missing the point of the movie. It's much better to just forgive the film its inconsistencies, go with the flow, and just enjoy it for the sci-fi lark that it is.